In response to a controversial incident in Philadelphia last month, all company-owned Starbucks stores in the United States will temporarily close this afternoon for racial bias training. You'll recall on April 12th, two African-American men, Dante Robinson and Rashawn Nelson, were placed in handcuffs after a store manager called the police on them for asking to use the bathroom without buying anything, and then they waited for a friend. Now, their arrest sparked outrage and a national conversation about racism in America.
Today's training is a step toward overhauling Starbucks' tainted image. The company's enlisted the help of civil rights leaders to put the curriculum together. Nearly 175,000 Starbucks employees will learn diversity education through videos and discussions. It hopes will set the foundation for a longer-term anti-bias diversity, equality, and inclusion effort.
Dr. Tanisha Ford is an associate professor of Africana Studies and History at the University of Delaware and the author of Liberated Threads, Black Women's Style, and the Global Politics of Soul. And she joins us once again to talk about this. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So we've talked about this,
Yes.
and explain to our audience how you think diversity education can actually improve or perhaps not employees who work at this organization and others.
Well, I think that this is a really great question, Vlad, because to my mind, Starbucks is going to have to do a couple of things and have the potential to do some things that are really important. One is that they're going to have to translate this language of unconscious bias for a lot of African Americans who are skeptical, thinking that this is a way to allow white people to get off the hook for their racism, but also to convince white folks that they might have these biases. Two, they're going to have to translate this into a policy that's firm enough that says, hey, if you violate this policy, there are consequences, but that one that can live and breathe in the environment of its 8,000 plus stores across the country. And then I think they're going to have to find a way to show us that this extends beyond today. And I think this is what they've done best, to say that this is just a start. And I think that if they're able to do those things, then they can perhaps set a model for how other corporations will respond to issues like this. But I think what's also key is that they have to then repair the relationship with the Black community. They have to let Black folks know that you are safe in our stores. And that is critical because some of these other issues are more about internal corporate dynamics. But this becomes a thing that again is more public facing, that says, hey, we were wrong, we wronged you as a community and these two young men in particular, so we're going to make this better. And I think that make it better step is the step that all of us are looking for. And if they can do those things, then they might be able to create a workable model and become a leader in terms of other corporations and how you handle a crisis like this.
Now, you know what happened at that Starbucks? You know, we have seen similar things happen all across the country. This is clearly not a Starbucks issue. It's an America issue.
Yes.
Is it fair that Starbucks is carrying the weight of this big problem that this country has been carrying for hundreds of years?
Well, right. So we know that this is a larger issue, you know, and that's one of the things that they'll see during this training, apparently. That Stanley Nelson, the famed documentarian, is showing his film, You're Welcome, where he really makes these historical connections between what happened to Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson on this day and this long, protracted history of racial discrimination in America's public spaces. But yes, Starbucks does have to carry the weight of a lot of this because they have branded themselves as the woke brand, right? We're the ones who are sensitive to these issues. You can go on their website and they show you that more than 60% of our partners, as they call their employees, are women. More than 43% are what they call minorities. And so they're touting themselves as the leaders. So if you say we're going to have campaigns like their Race Together campaign after the murder of Mike Brown, then when you have a problem in your house, then you need to clean that problem up publicly. And so yes, we need to hold Starbucks accountable for this. And I think that they are trying to step up and do their part. But yeah, a lot of the weight is on them, not because they created the problem, but because if you want to benefit from being this kind of brand, then you need to do the work.
It's interesting that there are some people who are still skeptical. And this extends beyond just racial bias training. It extends to, for example, the Me Too movement, when all of a sudden companies are putting into place training to allow people to understand when you should or should not act appropriately towards a female. And a lot of people say this training can go into place, but men are still going to be what men have been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and it takes more than just a company doing some CYA to get true change, true equality for women, for minorities. What do you say about that?
Well, I think that it is true that we have the right to be skeptical as people, as consumers, as people who have to move through this space. We definitely do, you know, and I think that with Starbucks in particular, Black folks have options. You know, we don't have to drink coffee at Starbucks. You know,
right.
If we think about Philadelphia alone, there's Uncle Bobby's, there's Fannie Lou's. There are these other places that people can go to have their coffee. And so, yeah, when you have choices, then we can hold companies accountable. And so for me, it's about the on-the-ground activism. It's about people in communities having the voice and having the technology now through smartphone technology, through social media to say, this is what we want and this is what we don't want. And when companies can't do that or meet our needs, then we have the right to vote with our dollars.
Can I just, Howard Schultz was on CBS this morning, and he genuinely seems as if he was hurt by what happened and that he understands exactly what happened, and he's trying to figure out a way to make the company a better place. I wonder, when we think about the history of racism in this country, and you look, for example, back at the early start of the civil rights movement when some young men went and sat down at a lunch counter, and essentially the folks who owned that organization said, get out, we're not going to change anything. And it took the federal government, essentially, to make changes. We've come a long way from where CEOs of companies say, I don't care about what these people think, or they can boycott my store all day long, I'm not going to change my policies. Does that at least give you some hope?
Well, what I think here is that a CEO is only one voice. A corporation is a behemoth, right? It's a massive thing that even if we fire all the top level executives at Starbucks will continue to function, right? And anybody in leadership, when you have a critical mass of thinkers, they can change and shift a corporate climate, right? So my thing is, I am for people, because corporations are always going to serve their own best interests.
Right, they're not people.
They're not people, right?
Right.
These are major corporations, and so my thing is that if we look historically at this, then yes, we can see that Starbucks is trying to position itself differently in this moment. But I think, again, that it is the people who have forced them to get here. It is everyday people, just like it was in that movement. The government didn't just act on its own. It was Black folks putting their bodies on the line every day that even made the federal government reluctantly get involved in the civil rights movement. So again, I'm always, I have a healthy skepticism of big corporations and of capitalism. And so for me, I'm for the people.
All right. Tanisha Ford, thank you very much.
Always great to have you.
Thank you.